welcome to Module 4 of the Unbinding Prometheus Shelley MOOC. So in this first video, we are in the library and I'm joined by members of the Penn Shelley Seminar Group and Professor Sheila Murnaghan. But I'm afraid most of this video is just me talking, answering a few questions and asking some students to read. What we're looking at here is the lines leading up to 400. So this is Panthea and Ione examining the state of Prometheus and then the entrance of Mercury and the Furies. And I sort of lay out a particular reading of how Mercury's behavior, what it means. But as we'll see later, there's a lot more subtle gradations and possibilities for interpreting how Mercury feels about what he's doing and what he's doing. But here's an introductory video, and I hope you enjoy it. Because Shelley is very much the poet of non-violent change here. Violent change just brings about a different tyranny. Okay? So they're frightened that their side doesn't have a champion, but in fact, their champion has changed course. Okay? So here's the Earth's line, that Jove at length should vanquish thee. They think Prometheus is vanquished. Wail, howl aloud, land and sea, the earth's rent heart shall answer ye. Howl, spirits of the living and the dead. And I, of course, hear Whitman and Ginsberg in that howl, because, you know, this is like, I'm chained, I need to be free. Whitman is a poet of breaking chains. Ginsberg is a poet of recognizing the chains of America and willing us to be free. Howl, spirits of living and the dead, your refuge, your defense lies fallen and vanquished. And we get fallen and vanquished as echoes. I mean, he didn't have to do it, but he gave it to us. He wanted us to know that this was how everything felt. And we have this kind of sonic music of the grief of loss. And then we get Ione, our oceanette, who says, fear not, 'tis but some passing spasm. The Titan is unvanquished still, but see, where through the azure chasm of yon fort and snowy hill, trampling the slant winds on high with golden sandaled feet that blow under plumes of purple dye, like rose ensanguined ivory, a shape comes now, stretching on high from his right hand, a serpent cinctured wand. Okay, so she's recognizing a shape. Something wicked this way comes, I'm afraid.
I wrote that down.
And it's the herald of Jove, Mercury, to do his dirty work. So let's look at what Ione says. Gail, can I get you to read Ione here? And can I ask Henry to read Panthea?
You can ask. I'm still...
You're still lost?
Yeah, I'm going to have to borrow somebody else's.
Okay.
All right. And who are those with hydra tresses and iron wings that climb the wind, whom the frowning god represses like vapors steaming up behind, clanging loud, an endless crowd?
These are Jove's tempest-walking hounds, whom he gluts with groans and blood, when, charioted on a sulphurous cloud, he bursts heaven's bounds.
Are they now led from the thin dead on new pains to be fed?
The Titan looks as ever firm, not proud.
Fury.
Ha! I scent life.
Let me but look into his eyes.
Oh, I'm afraid we're going to run out of Furies. I'll have to... The hope of torturing him smells like a heap of corpses to a death bird after that. Darest thou delay, O herald, take cheer, hounds of hell, what if the son of a Maya soon should make us food and sport? Who can please long the omnipotent?
A question here.
Yes.
Deathbird usually refers to vulture. Why do you think Shelley chose the word deathbird rather than vulture after bud. I mean, it seems like he would specifically, because the only birds that carry them, to my knowledge, that aren't catching their own food, or that will eat dead insects are vultures, unless there's another culture. They either are eating, say, grain, green stuff, or they're catching their own.
Of course, he's having his own body by which is sometimes identified as an eagle and sometimes as a vulture, depending on the myth that you're listening to. So
it was interesting that he used deathbird rather than a specific.
I'm not sure that Shelley does. I know he talks about an eagle baffling mountain. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that he doesn't actually talk about more than one of these birds in this poem. I believe he does. So he might want to have been reaching for a figure that encompassed all the possible birds that are eating his guts. But let me look at the poem and come back to you, and I'll let you know. I mean, that's not going to be a definite answer. Poets choose words because they sometimes think, I like the number of syllables here right now. And when Shelley is playing with rhyme, which he does sometimes in the poem, he's going to be making choices, based on things.
Lead, dead, fed. It was hard not to be that sing-songy.
And it's really interesting to think about when Shelley breaks into much more tightly metered, tightly rhymed forms. So I think that's something we should keep thinking about, because it does seem like free verse is the privilege of the individuals who get named and, break free.
And he was so young when he was writing this stuff. I mean, he didn't live to be 30, so it's like you almost wonder what would have happened had he
had
another
a very big
10,
question,
20 years to
That's a very big question.
produce.
Who would Shelley have been in 1850? Well, what if Wordsworth had died in, 1815? Some people would have preferred that. But I think to look back at the text here, because that's really our business, is it? We know that we have something coming, and we have this rush of voices, and I'm quite interested in Panthea and Ione. Sheila, what do you think is going on in that particular discussion back and forth?
Where they're identifying, they're like, I mean, this is a really, this is certainly a moment where we're thinking of the Eumenides, of the Furies. It's also, in a way, this is very like what happens formally in tragedy. I mean, this is a moment where you have a kind of theater with no stage directions, and someone shows up, and so you ask, who is that? And so the whole sort of process of identifying people who are coming is sort of built into the texture of the play. So I feel like that's a moment where we feel we're in the world of tragedy, I guess. Obviously, beyond that, it's preparing you, giving you a kind of physical shape behind these voices of the Furies when they themselves kick in. It's very, very reminiscent of the Furies in this case.
So, Shelley actually had been translating, the Prometheus Bound, so he was very close to the language and the texture of the language. And at times he really does try to dredge it up and give you, I feel like there's some kind of delight for the reader who may have very well gone back to Prometheus Bound just before this and said, oh wow, look how he's working with the language. On the other hand, he has to do some extra work because there aren't going to be actors on the stage. Right. We can't play with the stage settings. We've got to really describe this. So the audience, and Shakespeare does this sometimes because, simply speaking, they didn't have the sophistication and the money to do everything they wish they could have, so they have to describe it. So, and who are those with hydra tresses and iron wings that climb the wind? We're getting some really cool mental images. But one of the issues I find reading this is that the language pushes you onward, especially when you have, the rhymes, you want to get to the next rhyme. But at the same time, you want to give each of these images a little bit of time in your mind, in order for it to really resolve there. So one thing I recommend as a reader is reading this just twice. Just read it out loud and get the sound of it, and then go back to it and let those images clang around in your head. You know, there's that wonderful William Carlos Williams poem, So Much Depends Upon, the Red Wheelbarrow poem. I suggest that a good way to read Shelley sometimes is to keep those 4 words, so much depends upon, in your pocket and take them out. And as you find these images, say to yourself, so much depends on Jove's tempest walking hounds, whom he gluts with groans and blood. Yeah, God, so much depends on that. So much depends on charioted on sulphurous clouds. He bursts heaven's bounds. My goodness, how do you burst heaven's bounds on sulphurous cloud? Okay. So now Panthea gives a very brief but I think important description. The Titan looks as ever firm, not proud. So to go back to that fear that everybody had that we've lost our champion. Okay, but wait. He looks firm, but not proud. You know who looked to me firm, not proud? Nelson Mandela walking out of Robben Island. He looked firm, but not proud. Gandhi, meeting the British across the table, was extremely humble, but extremely firm. These are people learning a disposition and a political strategy from a poem which moved them. Okay, let's go forward a little bit. We're about to meet Mercury. There's a lot of ways he could have played it with Mercury. Okay, Mercury is this guy, and it's like this. Okay, I work for a mob boss, and I'm coming to your house. And look, I hate to tell you this, because you seem like a nice person, I'm going to have to take your house, and I'm going to have to break your legs. I'm so sorry about that, because you seem like a great person. But, my boss, if I don't do that, he's going to kill me. So I'm afraid, unless you really listen closely, your legs are going to be broken, and you're going to have to find a new place to live. How does he actually do this? Let's have a look, okay? Who would like to read Mercury? Tim, if I gave this to you, would you read Mercury?
Back to your towers of iron and gnash beside the streams of fire and whale, you foodless teeth. Geryon, arise, and Gorgon, Chimera, and thou Sphinx, subtlest of themes, who ministered in Thebes' heaven's poisoned wine. Unnatural love and more unnatural hate, these shall perform your task.
Right. You see, the shills from Mafia Don spoke really much better back in those days. They had a lot going for them. But he shall perform your task. Let's find out what that task is. I know somebody's afraid of it. Let's listen to the Fury. Oh, mercy, mercy. We die with our desire. Drive us not back. Crouch then in silence, awful sufferer. To thee unwilling, most unwilling I come. By the great Father's will driven down. I mean, that's the tyrant, the great Father's will driven down. To execute a doom of new revenge. You thought what happened before was bad? Let me tell you, mister, you've got another thing coming. Alas, I pity thee and hate myself. Boy, do I hate myself. I hate having to do this. That I can do no more. I from thy sight returning for a season, heaven seems hell. We're back to Milton in a way, and hell is its own place, which is a very important idea for Shelley and all the romantics. So thy worn form pursues me night and day, smiling reproach. Wise art thou, firm and good, but vainly would stand forth alone in strife against the omnipotent. You're such a great guy, but my God, you're going to stand here against Jove as yon clear lamps that measure and divide the weary years from which there is no refuge, long have taught and long must teach. All right. Even now thy torturer arms with the strange might of unimagined pains, the power whose schemes slow agonies in hell, and my commission is to lead them here. Or what more subtle, foul, or savage fiends people the abyss and leave them to their task? Be it not so. There is a secret known to thee, and to none else of living things. Diane, what's the secret? What does Prometheus know? He knows. Who knows? Does someone here know? What's Prometheus' secret?
Secret of the fire, the source of the fire.
Prometheus knows that Jupiter's going to fall. He knows that he can fall if he marries the wrong person. Okay? This is the secret that Prometheus has been holding on to. He won't give it to Jove, because if Jove knows that secret, he'll be able to be omnipotent. And at the beginning of the poem, of this poem, he says, look, I could have made you omnipotent except for this secret. It was the secret that meant no matter how much he was punished, Jove wouldn't kill him. He would cut off his eyelids so he couldn't sleep. He would bound him to the equal baffling rock and have a death bird eat his guts. But you will not die until I've extracted from you this secret. And I think of what we sometimes did, what the British and Americans did to prisoners. And I think of Jove and what he's doing to Prometheus. Now, not that these people were all worthy of the title of Prometheus, but Jove is not successful. We see that. 3,000 years have gone by, and Prometheus still hasn't told him what he needs to know. You know, as much as he's been water tortured and, you know, so we see the same things, and they're still not working. So something's perplexing when he calls the Supreme. When he says the Supreme, he means Jupiter. So he says, clothe it in words. In other words, give away that secret. Give it life. Let it go on. Tell us what it is. Clothe it in words and bid it clasp his throne in intercession. Bend thy soul in prayer, and like a supplicant in some gorgeous fane, let the will kneel within thy haughty heart. For benefits and meek submission tame the fiercest and mightiest. So really, great language, but he's saying the same thing. Just tell me what you know. And hey, he may go easy on you. That's the whole message here, okay? And once you get that message, you can revel in the language. You can play with the language. Everyone always says how complicated Shelley is. Not always. Sometimes the message is actually, you know, something you can get. And then go ahead and explore, because there's other things going on, especially sonically and performatively. So now we get back to Prometheus. Kelly, can I ask you to read Prometheus' speech from line 380? Yeah.
Evil minds change good to their own nature. They gave all he had, and in return he changed the years, ages, night and day. Whether the sun stood my parched skin, or in the moony night the crystal-winged snow came round my hair. Whilst my beloved race is trampled down by his thought-executing ministers, such is the tyrant's recompense. 'Tis just. He who is evil can receive no good, and for a world bestowed or friend lost, he can feel hate, fear, shame, not gratitude. He but requites me for his own misdeed. Kindness to such is keen reproach, which breaks with bitter stings the light of sleep revenge. Submission, thou dost know I cannot try. For what submission but that fatal word, the death seal of mankind's captivity, like the Sicilian's hair suspended soul, which trembles o'er his crown, would he accept or could I yield? which yet I will not yield. Let other flutter crime where sits throned in brief omnipotence secure our lay.
Stop for a second. Thank you so much. So let's go to this line for a moment. Or could I yield, which yet I will not yield? Let other flatter crime, where it sits throned in brief omnipotence. He's kept hearing about omnipotence. He's saying, omnipotence, brief omnipotence. I'm the President of the United States for 600 more days than you're my neighbor.